We saw his first UFO in broad daylight over LA in the neighborhood of Silver Lake.
Uh-huh.
And it was very high, and we had a palm tree to look at, so it was not moving. And then we looked at each other, and he was teasing me. He said, "You and your UFO books," and and he was like, "What if it's a UFO?" And I also had this attack of sleep paralysis twice in one night.
Mm-hmm.
This is how the whole abduction thing started for me. So I woke up in my bed, paralyzed, and I couldn't move.
Mm-hmm.
And I had had that before in my life, very occasionally, but I never had any other associated elements.
Yes.
But this time it was really weird and scary, because what happened is, while I was in that paralyzed state, I heard an electronic sounding voice say my name. I saw everybody. I worked all the Oscar parties, the big parties at the celebrity houses. But my favorite memory, even though it was a small part, was being in the movie Vice with Christian Bale, who is amazing, and he played Dick Cheney, and he was totally transformed. So I played Mary Matalin, who was the counselor to the vice president. Later, when I met my husband, who's an astrologer, he looked at my chart and he said, "You really have the chart of a writer." And I ended up writing for UFO Magazine for 4 years.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're here with, is it Camille James Harman? Is that how you say it?
Harman. Mm-hmm.
Harman, yep. And you have a very interesting experience to tell us about, and we're collecting interesting human experiences on our show. But you were you're an actress in Hollywood, and I want to hear all about that as well. So let's just take it from the top, because we're covering two different subjects here, and I want to hear about both, and maybe how they interact a little bit too. But what was your first introduction into like paranormal or anything like that? Did you have an introduction to that as a child?
I would say mostly through TV, not personal experience. Although I look back and I wonder if all this didn't start earlier and it was just subconscious level events. I had some weird nosebleeds as a kid. I was one of those kids who had a lot of illness and some trauma, and I had nosebleeds in the morning. I would wake up, my pillow would be all bloody, and that's kind of a red flag for this later experience. So I don't know. But I grew up with things like Star Wars, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, the Land of the Lost with the sleep sacks.
What about In Search Of? Did you watch that? In Search Of?
Yeah.
With
Was
Leonard
that
Nimoy?
the Leonard Nimoy? Yeah, all that. I was into the paranormal all my life. But I never had any experiences that I was aware of. And all my fears were paranormal as a kid. I wasn't afraid of people. I was afraid of getting possessed or anything scary at night.
Was it because like back, I don't know exactly when we're talking about time, but like there was a lot of movies in like the 80s about like possession, and like, there was even that one that scared the crap out of everyone. What was it called?
The
Exorcist.
Yeah, I saw that when I was like 13. It scared me.
I think everyone did. Yeah, like it's one of those ones. My age, my generation, it was It. Stephen King's It. That scared the crap out of me when I was 13.
Yeah, I'm 59. So I was, I was like 10 when Star Wars and Close Encounters, I was like 10 or 11 when all that was coming out. And yes, I grew up like watching stuff in the late 70s and all through the 80s.
So, but you had not had like a personal experience. So what did you think of like, UFO? But just like you thought about it as sci-fi kind of thing, or?
When I thought about it as sci-fi, I didn't dismiss it as sci-fi only, but I was not actively researching UFOs specifically. I do remember, though, you remember the Dewey Decimal System in the library, right?
100%.
Like
yeah,
at
yeah.
school, and then I worked in a library. And I do remember, checking out a lot of the 001 books, because that's the paranormal section.
That's the best section.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so your experience happens later in life, and we'll get into that. But did you wanted to be an actress in Hollywood? You wanted to be in performing, or how did that start for you?
Well, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a writer. And it's interesting because later, when I met my husband, who's an astrologer, he looked at my chart and he said, "You really have the chart of a writer." And I ended up writing for UFO Magazine for 4 years. And I'm working on a book now about my experiences. So, maybe I'll end up a writer. But I decided to act in my early 20s when I was just about to finish college, and I started acting in community theater. And I actually started doing props, and I was watching the actors from backstage handing them props, and it looked so fun, and I just thought that looks fun as hell. I want to act. And so
Yeah.
I switched to acting, and then it just never stopped. I took a little break in Arizona, but other than that, I've been doing it since my early 20s.
Wow. And so I want to hear more about, we're going to get into more of the acting, but the UFO magazine, I want to I'll put a little side note on that. So we'll bring that up here in a second, in a little bit. But what was your general like experience in Hollywood? And what was your favorite sort of moments and favorite projects that you worked on? And that kind of thing. I'd like to hear a little bit about that.
Sure. So, I got my master's at University of New Orleans, and then my boyfriend and I moved to LA. And so I did a lot in New Orleans. I also acted in Richmond, Virginia. And then when
Hmm.
I got to LA, I was pretty
Doing
set up.
stage work, like plays and stuff?
Yeah, I have a
Mhm,
master's in theater, and I did a
mhm.
lot of theater. I did Shakespeare. I did Tony and Tina's wedding. I did all this
Cool.
theater. I played Tina. That was very improv heavy. And
Mhm.
so I have some great memories, mostly from theater, actually. But
Yeah.
film has really been amazing too out here. And just so many good memories of just the scene out here. I mean, even catering. I
Mhm,
saw everybody. I worked all the Oscar parties, the big parties at the celebrity
mhm,
houses. Like, it's been fun. Um, but my favorite memory, even though it was a small part, was being in the movie Vice with
mhm,
Christian Bale,
mhm,
who is amazing, and he
mhm.
played Dick Cheney, and he was totally transformed. So I played Mary Matalin, who was the counselor to the vice president and to the president. So she was part of the whole 9/11 part of the story,
Mhm,
and I got to be in the
mhm.
9/11 scenes and this other scene where I had a couple of lines. So just to be directed by Adam McKay and be in a movie with Steve Carell and Christian. It was just like yes, and then it won an Oscar. So I got to go to all the awards season things.
Wow.
I paid for a publicist, and even though I had this teeny role, I said I may never be in an Oscar nominated film, so I need to go to all these events
Yeah,
and
of course,
things
soak
I
it
can go
in.
to, like not the actual Oscars, but all the associated
Yeah,
revelry going on. And
soak
so
it in.
I got to do all that. It was really fun, and to watch Christian Bale transformed, just the little
What?
things like, putting eye drops in for his contacts, and his glasses would lift the wig and they'd come in and put the wig down. I was like, dude, how do you focus with all that going on? You're amazing.
So yeah, because that movie's incredible, and he really does
Mm,
transform as about as transformy as you can get. And it's really neat that you got like an inside kind of
yeah.
look at that because that takes a lot of endurance, right? Like right, mental
Right,
and physical.
right. He had to get there like 4 in the morning to get in all that makeup and stuff before
Hmm.
he even started his day acting. And
Yeah.
I remember the sound stage at Sony was so freezing cold because they would crank the AC
Uh-huh.
so he
For
and some
him.
of the others that were wearing wigs and all that wouldn't overheat. And the rest of us
Yeah.
that weren't wearing wigs were freezing, but
Yeah.
it was worth it. And then the other thing I remember too is seeing him up close with all of that on, being
Hmm.
totally
Hmm.
transformed. And then later I worked background in a movie with Sean Penn, who had full prosthetics on playing John
Yeah.
Marshall. And then later when the rumors came out that we were watching like replacements of certain politicians and people in
Hmm.
masks, I was like, that is totally possible because I stood right next to these big actors and you could not tell it was them.
Yeah, that is wild, and you couldn't tell it was him unless if they put that movie out, and if they put that movie out and just didn't say it was Christian Bale, you wouldn't know it was Christian Bale. And I also think it's a very important film
Yeah.
about like how badly we can get lied to in such a large scale way by the people that we're supposed to trust in the government,
Right.
and not just them, the contractors and the companies that work for them. And it's a very important film. So did it
Yeah.
feel good to be part of like such a truth telling film?
It did. And I wrote Mary Matalin, the woman I play,
Uh-huh.
and she wrote me back. That was very cool. I framed it.
Oh,
Um,
neat.
but I later on when I have to tell the story of how light beings instructed me about my career in a way that
Right.
that happened in 1997. And then you flash forward to when I was filming this in 2016. It was coming true. Like the things they told me about my career being related to important events. It's just wild. It's
I
just wild.
I want to hear about that because it really, I mean, that was a very important film. So what you were told in 1997 that let's just like start getting into now, did and is coming true. So, uh, just to start from the top, wherever you think is relevant,
Okay.
to your experience, like before, like and after, if you don't mind.
Sure. So, like I said, I had a kind of background interest in the paranormal, but no experiences. I had slept in a haunted house and didn't see a ghost, for instance. Now, I finally went to Ireland this summer and slept in a haunted hotel and had a ghost attack. So, that's another thing that happened recently.
I want to
But,
do that.
I was actively open to the paranormal as a concept that was real. I wasn't a doubter, I wasn't a skeptic.
Right.
But nothing had happened to me that I remembered. Anyway, so I moved to Los Angeles with my boyfriend in 1995, and like I said, everything was going for me. I had my SAG card, I had my master's degree, I had credits from New Orleans doing films and all this. So I thought I was going to rock this town. I got here, I got an agent right away. I had a day job. We had a cool house in Silver Lake on a hill overlooking, with view.
Sounds like a dream.
Yeah, it was like the dream come true. I had this great boyfriend. He had all these friends here from his school. So we were set up. Like we were set up and everything was going to be great. But then I realized I started having all this like anxiety and weird health things, and I had no menstrual cycle. We moved here in September. And right before we moved here, I think the catalyst was reading a Whitley Strieber book. I was walking down the aisle of this bookstore in New Orleans right before we moved here, and I was compelled to buy this Whitley Strieber book called Breakthrough.
Yeah.
Or Transformation. No, Breakthrough. There's two of them. Breakthrough, I think. And I was like, God, this guy's still writing about aliens. I hadn't read his other books, but I had seen Communion, the movie, because I love Christopher Walken.
Same.
And so I bought it and I read it, and it really opened my mind to the whole UFO subject. I was like turned on. I thought this is the most important book I've ever read.
He's really nice too. He's a really nice guy. We met him at Contact in the Desert this last year. So
yeah, I met him a few times over the year, and I got interviewed by his wife before she passed. She had a podcast on his website, and she interviewed me. But anyway, so I had it in my mind when I came to LA, but I had acting on my mind too, obviously. So what was weird is how this escalated. So I had all these weird symptoms. I had no menstrual cycle. I was kind of anxious, and I was watching UFO documentaries on the Learning Channel and Discovery and all those shows back then. And I had this weird night in December. Well, first we saw a UFO over Silver Lake walking our dog. So we saw his first UFO in broad daylight over LA in the neighborhood of Silver Lake. And it was very high, and we had a palm tree to look at, so it was not moving. And then we looked at each other, and he was teasing me. He said, "You and your UFO books," and and he was like, "What if it's a UFO?" And I said, "What if it is?" Like we looked back, and it was gone. So then we were.
What did that one look like?
It was very tiny. It was black, and it had a shimmer around it. It was hard to make out the shape, but I want to say it was maybe a triangle, but it was very high altitude.
Yeah.
And it wasn't moving. So when we briefly looked at each other and looked back at it, we were on a hill with a view of the whole sky.
What year was that?
Back, it was 95, December 95, and it was gone. And that's when I got excited, and I thought, I think it was a UFO. And I ran home and I reported it to MUFON. And the guy told me, we have these meetings once a month. And I said, oh, I am there. I'm coming to the meeting. So I started going to the meetings, and I met, but before I started going to the meetings still in December, I also had this attack of sleep paralysis twice in one night. This is how the whole abduction thing started for me. So I woke up in my bed paralyzed, and I couldn't move. And I had that before in my life very occasionally, but I never had any other associated elements. And this night I
like
did.
Entities and weird stuff like that, right?
Right. It was just the paralysis. Like so
I've had that twice with no entities at all, just the paralysis.
Okay. So you know what I mean?
Yes.
But this time it was really weird and scary, because what happened is while I was in that paralyzed state, I heard an electronic sounding voice say my name
Uh-huh.
coming from my left.
Like
And that
Camille,
scared
Camille,
me. It
Camille,
was
like
like a
that.
robot. It was like, I always say it was like Intergalactic by the Beastie Boys.
Okay, yeah, all right, that's
But
perfect. That's a
but
great song,
that
dude.
song didn't come out until years later, but
Right, but
it was like that.
now I'm
It was
never gonna
great.
be able to hear that song the same way again.
I
But great,
know. Like that.
that's hilarious.
It was
Okay,
like a
all right,
computer voice talking my name. And
hilarious.
it scared me, obviously. And then I
Mm-hmm.
also saw a flash of a gun in my
Mm-hmm.
face, like a flash.
Wow.
At the same time, I was like, what is happening? I've never
Uh-huh.
had,
Yeah, that.
hearing things, seeing things associated with that. So it really scared me. And it happened twice in one night.
Mhm.
And anyway, so when I got to my meetings,
Did you know what sleep paralysis was at that time, or were you just kind of like? Because
I
when it
don't think
happened to me, I
I
didn't
don't
know what
think
it
I
was.
did. I don't think I was familiar with the terminology and the
Neither.
traditional medical explanation and all that. Now later when I went to a channeling with Bashar,
Mm-hmm.
like a year or so later, I asked Bashar about it. And this is interesting if you believe Bashar channelings. He said he said sleep paralysis was the doorway sensation of your body shifting dimensions.
Mm.
I thought that was very interesting. So anyway, so I started going to MUFON. I
I
heard Kim
believe it to be true.
Carlsberg. Yeah. And Kim Carlsberg, I hate to sound like I'm rushing. And people sometimes they say, you don't sound very emotional when you're recalling all this. And it's like, because it happened 30 years ago and
Right, and
I
you've told the
told it
story
a
a
million
bunch.
times.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
expect, I guess, because I'm an actress, I'm going to like start crying when I retell it. But sorry, I just have a lot to get through.
yeah.
So,
Don't
yeah.
you do you? You do you.
So I go to this Kim Carlsberg talk with
Mm-hmm.
Daryl who's Bashar, channels Bashar, and they had written a
Mm-hmm.
book together. He did the illustrations of her story, and she was in the industry as a set photographer for Baywatch, and she was a boyfriend and girlfriend with the producer or director of Baywatch, and they lived at the ocean, and she was
Sure.
having all these really gnarly abductions and hybrid removals and all this. And I just got really awakened by her talk. It really triggered me, as they say
Mm.
now. And I was kind of on the verge of a panic attack. I looked at her book on the back table and it had a checklist like, you might have been abducted if you got all these symptoms. And I was looking at them thinking, okay, I have like 85% of these symptoms, including, hello, my menstrual cycle that disappeared for 4 months and magically came back in
Mm-hmm.
January after my sleep paralysis event.
Mm.
And
Nosebleeds as well. The nosebleeds is a thing.
all that, um, allergies as a child, I had a lot of allergies. Whitley Strieber says that's also a frequent thing.
It is.
Um, it's like, what am I allergic to earth? I don't know. Anyway, allergic to aliens? I don't know. But so I met Barbara Lamb that night, the
Okay.
famous hypnotherapist. And I said, I really need to schedule with you and have a regression because I think I am one of these people. Seriously, and I need to come in. So I went in and I did a regression to that night in December when I had the attack of sleep paralysis. And I had a full-on abduction memory that was the most terrifying, more real than real thing I've ever experienced. Um, I had a blue beam take me through my ceiling in a fetal position. Uh, I was screaming, going through the roof, and I did not see a ship. Let me qualify that. I did not see a ship. I just
Mm-hmm.
remember going up in a blue beam of light.
So
Next thing I
this
knew,
this was during a hypno regression.
hypno regression to that
Okay.
night when I had the sleep
And
paralysis.
what was the name of the hypnotherapist? I'm sorry.
Oh, Barbara Lamb,
Okay.
Lamb.
We know one that lives in Los Angeles that's done our show. I'm trying to think of her name off the top of
Yvonne,
my head.
Yvonne
Yvonne.
Smith.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
We know.
she's also my therapist. I've gone to her too.
Oh, she's been
Yes,
on our show. We love Yvonne here.
she's great. Yes, Barbara moved. She lived far away as it was, but she moved to near San Diego, and she's very old now, and I don't think she does that much regression work now. I think
Mm-hmm.
does appearances and talks, but
Mm-hmm.
I love Barbara. I love both of them. Anyway,
So,
so I had this full on abduction memory, and next thing I know, I'm on the table,
can you
and
take us
there's a
back to like what the regression is like? Sorry, I don't mean to
oh
interrupt, but
okay
like I want to hear about like, you know, the setup for the regression and stuff
Okay.
like that. Yeah.
So Barbara had an office in her house in Claremont upstairs,
Mm-hmm.
and I went up to her office, and she had a sofa,
Mm-hmm.
and I would lie on the sofa, and she would press the recorder, and she would talk me through the regression
Mm-hmm.
steps. It's basically relaxation, and then they do a countdown kind of a thing. I believe
Yeah.
with Barbara, it was like going downstairs, and you would
So
do this countdown.
very similar to what you see on TV, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. All right.
it's
Just
basically it's a meditation. It's an
yeah.
instructed meditation, and you get to a certain level, and then once you're in that level, she introduces the subject of the the target of the
Yeah.
regression.
Had you done regressive hypnotherapy before, or was that your first experience with it?
That was my first. I had done hypnotherapy to stop, like for diet, for like
Yeah,
you
the
not
smoking or
eat.
people done it for stuff like that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just curious what the setup was like and whatnot. So then during that you were taken on a whole, like you were remembered a whole experience then.
Right. And it's very emotional.
Yeah.
Like I was hysterical. My teeth were chattering. I was like, if you heard it, you would think someone was getting murdered in the next room. Like if you heard the noises coming out of my mouth, it was that. I have it all in recording. I've saved all this. I have to find it. That's the problem. I transferred the cassettes to digital, and I transcribed them too. So I have the whole, conversation typed out.
Man, sorry,
Yeah.
we gotta show that sometime.
I
But
have to find it. Actually, my husband, it's on a hard. I've gone through so many computers since then, and
mhm.
it's on a hard drive, and I have to find. It's really important to me. I keep nagging him. Anyway, I have to find it.
So
Um,
tell us about the experience
yeah.
then that you were
So
taken into.
yeah. So I go up in this blue beam in this fetal position, and then next thing I know, I'm on a table flat, like an exam table, and I'm flat. I'm lying on my back, and there's a misty white light all around me,
Mm-hmm.
like it's white mist, and I'm terrified. And I start screaming. They're all looking at me. Everybody's looking at me. Everybody's looking at me. And Barbara says, "Who is looking at you?" And I was so afraid I couldn't even look around in my memory. And so I finally looked to my left, and I saw a row of beings, and they all looked the same, and they were tall with long arms. They
Mm-hmm.
had white robes with a high collar. They had the
Mm-hmm.
huge head with the big wraparound eyes,
Mm-hmm.
and they had some kind of a triangle circle emblem thing on their solar plexus area, like a
Mm-hmm.
pendant or a clasp or something. I don't know.
Okay.
And I was terrified, and they were telling me to relax telepathically. They were just saying, relax, relax, relax telepathically. And she asked me, what do these beings want? And I said, I have a baby and they want it. And I was just screaming. And then my knees went apart and no one was touching them. And I remember being really afraid of that. And she said, you can go up out of your body and remember this from above if you want to. So I did that. It's interesting what you can do in hypnosis, because you have
Mm-hmm.
like this, you have your consciousness is beyond your normal consciousness. It's like you're tapping into something bigger than your two eyes, right?
Yeah, I think when you're there, it's kind of like you can almost be in like that sleep paralysis state too. Like it's like somewhere in between there, I think. Like you're like
Right. Well, one thing I've noticed listening to the telepathy tapes is
mm,
they've talked about consciousness with people who are blind.
mm-hmm.
When they see things in their, you know, altered states, they see 360. They can see objects behind them because they don't have any concept of, your vision being like
Right,
having
right,
blinders.
like
And
this, yeah.
so when she said you can go up out of your body and watch this from above, at first I was like, really? But
Mm-hmm.
you have a different awareness when you're in this
Mm-hmm.
state than you have with your two eyeballs.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, that was interesting, and I think about that often. So I watched a being. Well, I had another flash. I had a flash of an instrument that was like a gynecological tool, a speculum type thing with a basket at the end, and that was terrifying.
Yeah.
I call it the egg
Imagine.
beater or the egg whisk kind of thing.
Oof.
And this being came at me that I couldn't see. I couldn't see this being. It was like shrouded, blocked, whatever you want to call it. But it put that instrument in me and quickly took it out and I could see in my mind's eye or with my real eye or whatever, my memory, that there was some fleshy something small inside it that was pink. And
Jeez.
the being walked out of the room with it, and I was just like, oh my God, like you didn't even let me see it. And it was so
Yeah.
fast and it was so clinical and horrible. And I was so bereft and I was so violated and
Uh-huh.
confused and just horrified.
Uh-huh.
And you know that, and then my memory basically ended, and Barbara took me out of hypnosis and gave me my cassette tape. We had a little talk, you know, about kind of, okay, now that you know this, it's going to be hard to, you know, integrate and
Yeah,
take some time
integrate.
and all that. And so I brought my tape home to Eric, my boyfriend, and I played it for him. And he was like, holy crap, like this is terrifying. And if it's true, it's horrifying. And if it's not true, it's equally bad, because then you're either tricked or crazy or
Yeah,
something.
or you're
Like
having like
what?
some kind of trauma that you're blocking or
Yeah,
something.
like
Yeah.
what the hell? I mean, just listen,
Yeah.
just to listen to it is so hard for anyone to listen to a regression tape.
Uh-huh.
And and of course I, you know, I told my mom. I asked my uncle who worked for NASA. I mean, I was open out of the closet, telling my family, you know. And here I am, the
Right
straight A
away you
student.
were.
Here I am, the straight A student with a master's degree in LA. You know, trying to do all this, and now I'm this. Now I'm this person.
So the
It's vanity.
memory, let make sure that I understand. The memory, it was a memory that was likely from during that 4-month period where when you first got to LA, right?
Well, it was a memory from that actual night of the sleep paralysis. That's what we targeted.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Interesting. Yeah.
Now,
Cause I was wondering how it relates to that. You were the three, when you first got to LA and the menstrual cycle and the weird symptoms and stuff. Have you explored that in regression as well?
yes. So
Okay.
I I think that the having no menstrual cycle and then getting it back in January
Mm-hmm.
was real. I think I was pregnant with some kind of something. I don't know how
Mm-hmm.
I got pregnant. I was on the pill at the time. Um, from what I understand in the literature, these beings are making hybrids out of people's fetuses that
Mm-hmm.
they themselves created with us. Not, in other words, it wasn't my boyfriend's and my pregnancy.
Right.
It
Right.
was something they put in me months before that I didn't remember, that then they retrieved and gestated the
Oh.
rest of the way in these tanks. Apparently that's what people report seeing. I've never seen the tanks, but a lot of people have seen like tanks with babies in them, and they take the baby out at 3 months and gestate it the rest of the way artificially. And so that's what the literature shows in other
Mm.
people's regressions. I've done regressions trying to see if there's any more information about this child, or this, as Bashar said, children, because he said I had children on the
Mm-hmm.
ships.
Mm-hmm.
I have not been able to access any memories beyond this pregnancy removal. So I don't know how it got there. Um, I did when I was moving to LA. We drove a U-Haul and pulled my car behind it, and we went camping along the way once in Sedona, and I slept in a
Nice.
tent at Oak Creek. And with all the activity around there, I sometimes wonder if I got, I know this is a stretch, but I wonder, like, did they impregnate me at somewhere in Sedona when I was moving? Like, is that why all this weirdness started right when I got to LA?
It's funny you say that because we were just in Scottsdale for this conference, Quest for Ancient Civilization, and everyone was like, "You got to go to Sedona. The energy there, and and that's what everyone says about Sedona is
Right.
like, if you want to contact for good or bad the other side, that's like
Right.
one of the best places to do it.
Yeah.
So when you were there, do you remember anything weird happening in Sedona, or just a nice little
No.
camping trip?
Yeah, I just went camping. But I was aware of all that about Sedona, and
Mm-hmm.
I later I lived in Tucson for 10 years, and I went to Sedona
Mm-hmm.
quite a few times. And
Mm-hmm.
yes, they say that it's got underground bases and it's got
Mm-hmm.
portals, and a lot
Mm-hmm.
of it may have to do with the geology of the area. I took geology in college. I really love geology. I think because I grew up in Louisiana, which is like a swamp. It has no mountains except for salt domes. And
Mm-hmm.
so I always thought when I went to places with mountains that they were so amazing. And anyway, I took geology in college, but they say the high iron content and the quartz in the mountains there make it a very conductive, electromagnetically anomalous place.
Okay.
So there are people that know more about that than I do, but I don't know. I just, when this happens to you, your brain goes into overdrive thinking, why me? What
Yeah.
else happened that I don't remember? And it just escalates because you keep having more weird things. So more weird things happen. So I want to get beyond this first regression because so much more happened.
Yeah, I know you do. I just want to echo that, like in traumatic experiences, you do miss time and you do like forget stuff, and so when it
Hmm.
comes back, it's like I'm happy that you were able to explore it with like Barbara and Yvonne.
Yeah. And then when people would try to explain it away, like when I would say, I think this is real and this really happened. And they would say,
Hmm.
it can't be real. Like it must be something else. Like, you must have had an abortion and you just feel guilty. And I said, but I never had an abortion. So
Yeah.
that doesn't make sense for me. I can't like assign this to any other thing. This seems to be what it appears to be, which is
Right.
crazy as it is. And I'm not the only one reporting this. There are
No, that's
so
what's super
many of us,
important.
even
Yeah.
men. It's not just women, it's men having their sperm taken.
Hmm.
So it's going on.
Yeah. It is, and so I think that's super important, and like not just hundreds, maybe even thousands of people over the years have had these experiences or similar. So, what else happened then after that first regression?
Okay, so the next thing that happened was I kept living in this house in Silver Lake with Eric, and he went out of town to go back to New Orleans to shoot a TV show. And
Uh-huh.
it was with Gerald McRaney. I can't remember the name of it anyway.
Hmm.
So I was alone, sleeping alone for a week, and I noticed that with my old alarm clock, my old digital alarm clock,
Hmm.
I was waking up at 4 in the morning sharp every day, 4:00, and I was like, not every day, for 3 days, 3 days in a row. I woke up with my alarm clock saying 4:00, and I thought I did not hear a noise. Like, why am I waking up? What the heck? And the third morning, I had a fresh bleeding, crusted over, I should say, scab of a equilateral triangle on my calf.
What?
And I thought, that is some alien thing. I've seen that in a book or a video or something. And I found a picture of it in a book, or I think a video, I think both. And I've met several people since then that have had this triangle. Some people have a burn mark triangle and some people have the pinprick triangle. And I had the pinprick one. And so I went to Yvonne Smith to get regressed for
Mm.
this one. And I had a full on memory again with the beings. And this time I went in the blue beam, but I turned and I didn't go up through the ceiling. I turned and I went out the window, and that was weird. And then I was on the table with, but there was no misty light this time. It was just like a regular exam room feeling.
Hmm.
And there were three little aliens or whatever they are with the wrinkly heads. They had dark skinned, wrinkly heads, like I want to say brownish gray. I couldn't
Hmm.
see their eyes or any other
Hmm.
parts in them.
Hmm.
But when they came at me, I started crying and I was cussing them out. And I was saying, you make me scared of little kids because you look
Mm.
like little kids, but you're not little kids.
Mm.
And it was weird because at that time I was working as a substitute teacher, and I had this experience while working in a group of third graders at this classroom.
Right.
They didn't speak English. I got put in this last minute sub position in this room that had no lesson plan, no emergency folder, and it was a bunch of third graders that didn't speak English. And I was like, oh my god, and so that was a very challenging job that I did.
Superhero type jobs.
I did it
Those
for
those
years.
people, respect to those people who do that stuff.
So
Uh,
I thought, well, let me get them going on a drawing project, and I'll just give them some drawing paper. And so I asked the kids, do you know where the art supplies are? And some of them came up and they said, we will show you, teacher. They knew that much, we
mm.
show you. And they like put their little hands on me and started walking me toward this cabinet. And my
That's
whole
cute.
body went like in this cellular memory, like,
Yeah.
and I didn't scream or anything, but it was like my body remembered little beings grabbing me by the arms and walking me somewhere. That's what it
Wow.
was like. And I was
Wow.
able to keep it together and get the paper and go through my day. But that was a really weird experience. Anyway, so that's why I was yelling at these beings in the memory of the
And do you think you're doing it telepathically? You're not like saying it with your voice, or what do you think? How do you remember it?
I don't know, because because I was yelling
Hard
it
to
in the
tell.
hypnosis,
Right.
but
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a really good question. I don't know. I
Yes.
don't know. All
It
I
might be hard
remember
to tell.
is
Yeah. Like in those
one of
state
the,
like that,
yeah,
it's, you know.
I don't know if it was in the moment of the hypnosis or if it was a memory, but I was just
Mm,
yelling at them. And but what I remember is one of them that came up to my head area put its hand on my forehead and started going like this. And I remember
mm,
cussing at it and going, "Get your freaking hand off me, you bastard," or something.
mm, mm.
Because it repulsed me. I had this extreme I was revulsed by that
Uh-huh.
because there's something so shocking about this non-human
It's
thing. It's
non-human
very
and very
shock,
weird
like your whole body
clinical.
goes into panic mode, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially if it touches you. But when it was doing that, it melted my anger away and I got very submissive and calm. And I changed my tenor and I said, just do what you've got to do and let me go home. And I was almost crying. I was just like passive. I just melted. And then this doctor being that was on my right, there was a tall white with the big black eyes and the robe with the high collar. That was the doctor one. And I remember fixating on its long fingers. It had beautiful long fingers. And I thought it was very beautiful. The fingers at least. I was saying that in my regression. But then I looked up at it and it grabbed this apparatus. It had a wand and like a rack of points, and it put this little tip from the rack on the wand and then popped it in my leg. And that's what the triangle was. It was just like a little quick pop. I don't know what it does. I don't know what it was, but that was how I remember how I got it. But then I remember looking at the being from profile, and it was tall to me. But then it had antenna all of a sudden, and I started screaming that it looked like a giant bug. So I don't know if it morphed. I don't know if its true form
Mantoids.
was a mantis or something, ant person.
Yeah.
It was very weird because it looked like this tall white gray, and then
I wish
it
Mike was
looked like a
here.
bug. Yeah, so that was
Mike's
weird.
all into the mantoids. That is weird. And so you're you're getting this memory through regression with shout out to Yvonne Smith, friend of
Yeah,
the show.
yeah,
And do you listen to the tape afterwards with her
yeah,
or how? Okay.
yeah.
And because
So
this is you mentioned the word integration before, and I wanted to highlight how like traumatic something like this must be like, because like you really did like you know that the way you described it sounds very traumatic, and so
yeah,
you really do need to do work to like integrate this stuff, and so you had available to you this Yvonne, and which is great, and I wanted to shout out the importance of that because there's a lot of doctors that could be dismissive, a lot of other people that could be dismissive of your experience, and you're being very direct about what you experienced,
right. And it took me a while to just like there's spaces between these.
Yeah.
You don't just go, oh, that was cool. I want to do it again next week.
Yes.
You need like
Right.
months to kind of like.
Yes.
Plus, well, the event happened
And
later. So
life
that event
happens
happened in
too.
July of '96, and I don't remember when the regression was. It's on my tape, but it took me a while to get the regression, and I later learned this was something very interesting that I learned later. I was in a support group in Arizona I think it was the 2012 UFO Congress in Phoenix area, and I remember they were talking about the 3 a.m. thing, how the aliens often come at
Mm-hmm.
3 a.m., which has a whole other interesting backstory of conditions. So they say that 3 a.m. is it's when the world is most quiet. It's also when the body liver gets rid of toxins. That's why if you go out drinking and you wake up at 3 a.m. and you feel all sweaty, it's because that's when you're detoxing and it can wake you up. Also, in Catholicism, it's called the devil's hour. And that 3 to 4 a.m. is the inverse of when Jesus was,
That's what my mom
when he
told me when
died
I
on
was
the
a kid.
cross. So the devil does everything in the inverse. So 3 a.m. is the devil's hour. And Mother Teresa of Calcutta, Saint Teresa, used to get her nuns up at 3 a.m. to pray for
Mm,
people during that hour. And so
mm.
I brought up in the meeting, I said, well, mine happened at 4 a.m. sharp, 3 nights in a row. And someone said, what time of year was it? I said, it was in July. And they said, oh, they don't do daylight savings.
Oh, that's hilarious. Mike, where's Mike, Brittany? Mike would have loved that. That's
I know. I
fucking
was like,
amazing.
so
Hilarious. Yeah, because why would they? That's something we do. We invented.
right.
That's hilarious. But it's also again like a traumatic experience. You were in groups. There was like MUFON groups. Was that what you were doing, or like support
Yeah.
groups through?
Yeah. Well, thank God I lived in LA at the time, and they had all this here. They had MUFON.
Mhm.
We had MUFON LA, we had MUFON
Right.
Ventura County, we had MUFON
Right.
Orange County. So there's all that going on.
Great.
We had conferences. We had two of the best, most famous therapists in town doing regressions. We had support groups. I was going to support groups. It was amazing. It was so helpful. And the stories shared in those groups was like, wow. And we had all kinds of people, male, female, all races, all religious backgrounds. It was wild because, it's so important to understand that this is cross cultural,
Yeah, and then because it's cross cultural, the experience is slightly different, right? But it's all still the same symptoms and stuff. But sometimes there's a cultural lens that it's viewed through, right, or a religious lens and
Could be,
stuff
yeah.
like that.
I mean, in America, it kind of is more the same, but obviously, if you go to Africa or Asia, you're going to get different cultural influences. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's an important aspect. But it's interesting to say because at the time, I bet LA was around the only area you really could get support. Maybe New York City or something. Most other places in the country you probably couldn't, right?
Right. And this was before Zoom and all that. So like now I have friends all over the country that have these experiences, and they can hop on an experiencer group online and get a lot of support, even if they live in the middle of nowhere. So yeah. So anyway, then something else happened.
Wow.
So it was a big year, 1996. Meanwhile, I was going to healers. I went to a healer I found her name was Mary Angelique Raphael, and she has a website, and she's on Facebook, and she goes by Magi Mari Angelique Raphael, but she had an ad in the Whole Life Times, and it was basically, I can stop alien abduction. And it was like $100, call me. And I was like, here, stop it. And I went to her and she said, you agreed to work with these beings on another level of your soul contract that you don't remember. And if you want to sever the contracts, I can do that with you. And I said, yes. And she did this prayer with Archangel Michael and Saint Germain. And she said, Camille wishes to sever any and all contracts she's made on this time or any time, space, and dimension. And it stopped happening. So I did that. Okay.
Huh.
But
so it's possible that there was you made some kind of connection at some time in your spiritual journey, or either in this life or a different one, who knows, and you were trying to get away from it at the time.
Well, yeah, because at the time it was very traumatizing and frequent enough, so okay, next thing that happened was this. My dentist, I went and had all my fillings changed because I didn't like my mercury fillings. I was an actress. I wanted to have the beautiful white ceramic fillings, right? So I had all my old fillings changed out. And I love them, except for one was very sensitive. And so I went back to the dentist and I said, they're great, except this one's really sensitive. Can you look at it and see why? And he said, well, the seal is good. Give it a few more months. And I said, okay. So I came back because it still hurt. And I had told this dentist when I was getting all my fillings, I said, I'm an abductee. And I told him, I said, I read in one of my books about abduction that sometimes abductees freak out in the dentist chair because they have flashbacks, because it can remind them of the instruments and the whole lying down, with someone in their face. And he said, that is wild. I read a book about Roswell, and that's all. And I said, I said, I've never had a flashback at the dentist. I had braces and everything. I'm good. But if that ever happens to you, you'll know why. And I said, and if this is what I told him. I said, if you ever find anything weird in my body, you have to tell me. Now, why would I say that? So lo and behold, he digs out my brand new filling and he finds this spherical charcoal gray mass in my tooth. And he's digging and digging and digging and giving me more shots and digging. And finally he gets the mirror out and the little scratchy thing. And he shows it to me and he says, do you see this? I've been drilling on it forever. And I don't know what it is. It wasn't in your tooth before. It's not your old filling. What do you want me to do? I said, oh my God.
You're the dentist.
Like, what now?
Yeah.
And I said, well, just fill it up. I was like Scarlett O'Hara. I said, just fill it up and I'll think about that another day.
We'll figure it out later. Yeah. Like,
Yeah. Like, I'll
wow.
think about that tomorrow, she would always say in the middle of the Civil War. And
Man.
so he did that and it stopped hurting. So I kind of like let it lie. I didn't want to kind of go there. But then I thought, really, I should do a regression. Let me do a regression. So I went back to Barbara Lamb and I said, Barbara, we got to target my tooth now. My dentist found this thing in my tooth. What was it? So she puts me under hypnosis and I have this memory. Instead of aliens, I have a military abduction memory. And it was not good. And it really freaked me out. So what happened, the difference in the memory was this. In the alien memories, there was the blue beam. I had no blue beam. Okay. I just came to on a table in a regular room with cabinets, like an exam room with cabinets and a door and shelf. And I was on the table and I felt drugged. Now in my alien, I do this because I don't know if they're really aliens. In my alien memories, I was super alert, but I couldn't move, but I was super alert. Okay. I was high alert, conscious. But in this memory, I felt really drugged and kind of sluggish and kind of like, bleh. And all I remember is there were two guys in lab coats. They had khaki pants and black shiny shoes.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't want to blame the Navy, but that is what the Navy officers wear. The khaki.
Right.
Just saying. I don't know who they were. But I was called a troublemaker. And this wasn't in the form of like long sentences. This was just a word, like troublemaker was me. And then one of them took a syringe and squirted something into my jaw. Through my cheek is how I remember it. Now that could have been wrong, but it wasn't through my mouth like a dentist. It was like this way, which is really weird. And they put me on a gurney.
Close to where the other tooth was?
Right where that is over here by this molar. And then they put me on the gurney and rolled me down a hall and put me in there was a hangar at the end of the hall with a black helicopter. And they put me in this helicopter lying down. And then the ceiling opened and it was very bright. I remember it was daytime and it hurt my eyes. And then we went up and they brought me to my house in Silver Lake. And there's this little field in Silver Lake that's still there because I drove over there and walked in it recently. And it's big enough for a helicopter to land. And they said, go home and take a nap. And that's all I remember. I don't remember getting out of the helicopter. I don't remember walking in my door, but it was in the daytime. And that freaked me out so bad. That's all I remembered. So I came out of that memory and Barbara was freaked out because she said, you are my first military abduction memory person. I've heard of it, but I've never had a client have that. And what was weird is the cassette tape didn't record. And this is what I can't remember, but I was so angry because I like to transcribe and have all my regressions. And I don't remember if she said she pressed record and at the end of the tape, there was nothing on the tape, or if it just didn't record. I can't remember the mechanics of what she said happened, but she was very angry too. I swear I pressed record kind of thing. And we were both very kind of frazzled by that. So anyway, I was very paranoid. I came out of it very angry and scared. And I was saying things like, great, if that happened and that was real, then what the hell else has happened to me that I don't remember? Oh my God.
There's so many different places that can go because it's straight out of the X-Files, but it confuses the experiencer into and I think that might be on purpose. But it's it makes you wonder if it's people or if it's extra dimensional or if it's aliens or whatever, but you're purposely confused. I think sometimes, I don't know if you feel the same way,
it makes you wonder,
am
I being tricked? Do I trust my memories?
Yes.
Are they in cahoots? All of these things.
Yes, correct.
And
it could all be true. You could have experienced both, as well. That's a possibility. And so that's what makes that even more mind bending, I think.
It is mind bending and it's terrifying. And then you start thinking more about the past. And I thought of the recent past because in that Silver Lake house, another weird thing that happened is I was taking a bath one night, and we heard a helicopter very low over our house. Now that's not uncommon in LA because of crime, right? So they're looking for somebody. So, but it was right over our house, and it lasted long enough to where I got out of the bathtub because I thought if there's a robber like right next to my house, then I better not be naked if he, tries to come in our house or something. And so I got out, I put my robe on, and I remember my boyfriend walked into the backyard to look up at what was going on. And as soon as he walked in the backyard, we heard on the speaker coming from the helicopter, "He's in the backyard." And then we thought, holy crap, the robber's in our yard. Get your ass back inside, And he came back inside because we thought it was the robber. But now I think back and I'm like, what if they were talking about Eric? And they said, he's in the backyard. Like they were there for me.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to become super paranoid, but you rethink things. And then I rethink, okay, when I was little, I lived with my uncle, the NASA scientist, who worked under Werner von Braun on the Saturn V rocket and many other projects, including the tethered satellite with the Italians that got swarmed by UFOs. So my Uncle Jack worked at NASA. And when I was little, I went to live with him for a year. I was passed around the family. My mother was a teenager when I was born, and I got passed around and eventually adopted by my aunt. But when I was like 2, I lived in Huntsville, Alabama. And I wonder, like, did they really swap biology for technology and some deal? And like by living with my uncle, did I get put on some kind of a list? Like because he works at NASA, we'll put his family into the system and maybe, I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying it's his fault. I'm just saying you wonder, like, how did I get involved with this?
Well, yeah. And again, it's like my favorite show. I got a post right there, but it's like right out of the X-Files because it's possible that there was a categorization system and like a drawing, basically a draft, for lack of a better word,
Right.
where there was a deal made, like you said, and maybe possibly related to like who worked for them. Who knows? But what we do know is that like in the 60s and 70s and then into the 80s and 90s, this started happening a lot.
Right.
And so groups started forming up, conferences, and that's the cool part is that you found community on it. But you're still experiencing it throughout the years, huh?
Well, so then it kind of shifted. Okay, so the next thing that happened is I found myself saying things like, "Oh, humans this, humans that."
Yeah.
And I thought, and I mean to be fair, I was reading a lot, so I could have been influenced by books I was reading, or like Good Aliens, But I was saying humans this, humans that, and I thought, well, I feel like I'm aligning with something non-human. That's good, but I don't know who they are. I don't have any memories of any good beings interacting with me. And I went to Barbara and I said, "Can we target this? Like, is this too abstract? Who does Camille miss? That's really what I want to know. Who do I miss? Because I miss some people." And so she put me under hypnosis, and I had the most amazing, outstanding, ecstatic OBE experience. It was wild. So the first memory I had was feeling like I was stuck in my body and being totally paranoid and claustrophobic and screaming, "I don't want to be in this body. It's so weak." And I felt like someone had stuffed me. I was like a sofa being stuffed into a pillowcase. Wow. And I was having like a revulsion of my own body and a total freak out. And she said, "Well, go to when you felt good or, powerful or happy or some word, like get out of that and go to somewhere else." And then I was popped out of my body and I was a blue orb and I was in the void. I was in space. I was like a blue orb in the blackness. And I recognized 2 of my friends who were blue orbs that were in my life now, 2 friends. And I was crying, like just in this kind of happy, otherworldly state. And then I saw
you recognized them. They didn't look like themselves, but they looked like blue orbs.
They were blue orbs, but I said, "That's John and that's Nicole, my 2 friends." And I was like
their energy. That's weird.
We're all blue orbs. I'm just all in this weird happy state.
Yeah.
But then I looked at Earth, and Earth was spinning, and I didn't want to go, and Earth was scary to me. And I I started panicking again, like I was on the edge of a diving board. I don't want to go to Earth. I don't want to go to Earth, and screaming. And Barbara said, "Well, see if there's someone you can ask. Why do you have to go to Earth?" And then these white light beings appeared that were huge, bigger than us, and overwhelmingly enveloping me with this oneness and knowledge. Like being in their presence was just ecstatic union. And I felt like
ecstatic union.
I felt oneness and love and out of time and space. And I was just babbling things like, they're my home, they're my family. And they had white robes on in this extreme light. And I couldn't really make out faces or anything, but they had like, humanoid form. They had white robes, and there was this white light that was ginormous. And
you felt like everything was going to be okay?
Yeah, I felt, but more than that, I felt like I was one of them. I felt like I was one of them, or I was, or part of me was still one of them. Maybe, I don't know. I just felt like merged with them. And I said, that's why I wear a white bathrobe. That's why I made my boyfriend a Lawrence of Arabia costume. Because I had this obsession with the movie Lawrence of Arabia. And anyway, I know, with the white outfit, I don't know. It was just this, I was having all these ramblings, and I said, I was just merging and talking about this ecstatic union with them. And I said, why do I have to go to Earth? And they said, the Earth needs you. And I said, why? And they said, to fight evil. And I was like, oh my God, like, really? Okay. Really?
Yeah.
What do I do? And they showed me this image where this love was coming through them from somewhere else in space, like God, I call it, through them, and then out their fingertips, and they were sending it to Earth. And I was doing this with them in the memory. I was talking like we do, it was very weird. And they said, we're always here sending people love, but it's like they're walking around with umbrellas, and we're just trying to get them. And it's a very beautiful image, like a video game almost. Like, it's like, get the humans, and they're all like this.
Yeah.
And so then I said, okay, well, am I supposed to lecture about you? What do I do? And they said, tell people we exist and we love them. And I said, okay, am I supposed to like give public talks? And they said, you're still supposed to act. And I said, what? They didn't say don't give talks. They said, you're still supposed to act. And I said, really? Because Hollywood doesn't make stuff like that. Like, really? And they said, don't worry, we will set it up for you so that you meet people and make projects worthy of your time. And I said, please, like, twist my arm. That would be amazing.
That sounds awesome. Yeah.
And the very next film I got was a short film about a man who had an angelic encounter. So that was weird. And my next agent that I got had experiences, which was very bizarre how that came about. And so cut to the chase. They said, the reason you're working so many jobs and you talk freely about aliens and all this is because you're trying to reach as many people as possible. And that was true. I was doing interviews. I'd been interviewed by the LA Times. Well, that was later, the LA Times. But I was doing documentaries and interviews and talks at the time. I was very out of the closet about all this, much to my boyfriend's horror. And they said, but if you act, you will reach so many more people. So I didn't know if they meant the projects and the subject matter was going to be related to this, or if my acting was a platform to serve as a way to get more attention to my story. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the way life is unfolded, like this movie Vice, which exposed, the deep state war machine, right? And then other things I've done a lot of documentaries talking about all this. So I'm very out of the closet and extroverted, and I talk freely about it. So they were right, and so that eclipsed all the bad memories. That, to be honest, those beings telling me that and setting me on my path and giving me confidence really eclipsed all of the negative memories of the scary stuff. And it was such a blessing that I went into Barbara that day and said, can we look at the beings I miss? Because I would have never had that come up, possibly.
Right.
It was wild.
Have you experienced them again and other times?
I have tried. I have had glimpses, but nothing full blown like that. And I don't know why. I think God gives you things in little doses that you can handle, and
Uh-huh.
moves me through life. Like I've had a lot of life experience since then. My
Mm-hmm.
boyfriend and I broke up. I went to England to see the crop circles. I had a fling, and I came home, and I told him, and he said, "I'm so glad you had a fling because I wanted to break up with you, and I didn't want to be the bad guy." So we're still friends. We both got married after that, shortly after that, and
Yeah.
I met my husband, Jeff, who is an experiencer. We met at a gas station in Malibu,
Oh, weird.
and he's an experiencer and he's an astrologer. And he explained some of this astrologically, like in 1995 and 96, like what was going on in my chart. He was like, yeah, that was like the perfect time for all this to happen to you. I hate to tell
Mm-hmm.
you. And so many things have happened. I actually started writing for UFO Magazine in 2000 to
Yeah.
2004.
What was this?
And
So what was that like? What were you writing?
yeah.
And like
Well, the way
what?
it started, I was obsessed with the rock star Sting. And I
Uh-huh.
went to see the crop circles in 1998. And
Nice.
Sting lives right near the crop circles in
Yeah.
Wiltshire, England, right near
Uh-huh.
Stonehenge. I actually rode
Yes.
my bike to his house and Stonehenge the same day.
Hugh Newman lives right there too. I don't know if you know who he is, but he's an
No,
ancient history guy.
oh yeah, and a lot of rock stars like the Trogs and other people, they're into that out there.
Yeah,
Anyway,
exactly.
so I asked, I had met Sting before, and I met him a couple times since then. But I had asked Vicky Ecker. I said, if I could get an interview with Sting about his interest in UFOs, would you put it in UFO Magazine? And she said, yes.
Mm.
But she said, but I need a writer for the magazine anyway. So why don't you just write for us and cover the MUFON meetings and other things? And I thought, oh,
Oh,
awesome. So I
cool.
started doing it. That's how it was. This is my Sting obsession. So I started covering the MUFON meetings mostly. I did some other articles, like there was a play. There was a play about aliens that I did a review of
Hmm.
that came out. And
Did you write
anyway,
the Sting
so
article?
no, I never got the Sting article,
Uh,
even though I met him a couple times. He didn't do it, but I tried, and but he did talk about it in other play, like in a book I read. He talked about it, and
mhm.
he's seen a ghost. He's seen two ghosts. No, he's seen a ghost. He had a body discovered on his property in England that
Mhm.
they were trying to do a pool or something, and they dug up this ancient skeleton that was chained
Mm.
from like Roman times or something, and they gave her a proper funeral, and then the crop circles around where they live. So anyway, um, but I don't know where I was going with that, but so I wrote for UFO Magazine, and it was really fun because I got to interview the presenters afterwards about
Mhm.
whatever fill in I wanted, and then they would send me their photos and other things so I could finish the article. So I was,
Mhm.
I was hanging out like at
You're
Denny's
right there.
wherever
Yeah.
wherever we were eating afterwards. The
Mhm.
Beverly Garland. I remember having like a late breakfast with Nick Pope, and it was just fun because I had extra access to the speakers, and it was great. It didn't pay great, but that was okay. I had really a lot of good times doing it.
It sounds like fun, and 2000 to 2004 was like a great time for that. This is when
Yeah.
like these things were heating up, like literally, as well as like in the media and stuff like that. Can you talk a little bit about the media and how they've kind of started to come around on this over the years, and how it was like
Yes.
that in the 80s and 90s versus now?
I agree, and I think that it's a combination of factors. First of all, I'm in Hollywood Disclosure Alliance, which is a newly
Hmm.
formed networking group of
I was going to
Hollywood
ask you
people
about that,
interested
so
in
thank you.
UFOs. Yeah, and so it's been great, and we've had some great events and parties, and I've made great connections. I've done a couple documentaries from that connection,
Hmm.
um, and I'm hanging out with really neat people here in LA that are in that group, like Paul Hynek, J. Allen
Hmm.
Hynek's son, who
Hmm.
has the
Hmm.
most amazing stories about his childhood growing up with his dad, who ran Project Blue Book. It's like wild.
Yeah, I feel like that's
Um,
happening right now.
but again, living in LA has been such an asset to my knowledge base, and so regarding the Hollywood connection, I first read about this in a book called Hollywood versus the Aliens by Bruce Rux. It came out in 1997.
Hmm.
And it was about how Hollywood had worked with the intelligence agencies
That's what
to
people
put
say.
out certain narratives. I mean, how do you think these big films got access to all our military equipment and and jets and whatever to make Independence Day and all these things.
I know
So
it's
there
such a
are,
good movie, but yeah, I know
yeah.
you're right.
So there's storylines they put out through fiction. And then I also personally think even things like the History Channel are working with intelligence
Probably, yeah.
to put out certain narratives and information because it's a slow disclosure. They have to prepare the public subconsciously through documentaries and fiction to have certain base ideas in their subconscious or conscious rather, so they can handle what's coming next. And so I'm not saying it's a bad thing or a good thing. I'm just saying
Right.
it's a thing. I really believe it's a thing.
I do too. I mean, I've been falling for it, for lack of a better word, since I was a kid. Just I've been like going on, starting with In Search of and the X-Files, and all the way through to the Fire in the Sky with Travis Walton, and that's why I have the X-Files poster next to me, unironically saying I want to believe, because I remind myself all the time, like. That I really do want to believe. So I want to make sure that, like, because there's some real stuff happening, like possibly aliens, possibly interdimensional, possibly God, angels we're dealing with, right? But then there's also some military shit going on. I was in the military. I'm well aware of like well, I'll just say I'm well aware of how much money is like put into places that no one ever sees,
Right.
and whatnot. And so I know they put assets and things like that everywhere, and they do try to control the narrative through the media.
Right.
And so now we're in this time of like what I call modern disclosure, which is like these guys, Jeremy Corbell, and they're talking about it on Joe Rogan, and they're doing the congressional hearings and things like that. What do you think about like all that? Like, because to me, it's I don't know what to think. I feel
Yeah,
very, I don't know.
I agree. I'm very conflicted, and well, I'm very first of all, I'm very conflicted in my own experiences about whether it's a
Yes,
good or a bad thing or a mixture
yes.
of things. Whether I went through a phase where I thought it was all demonic, and I dropped out and went to the Latin Mass for 9 years, and I still go to the Latin Mass, but I'm not like a hardcore Catholic. But I just I've really changed my mind a lot about what I think it is,
You
and
mentioned
so I still
God
don't know.
before.
Hmm?
You mentioned God earlier, like possibly
Yeah,
the love and connection to God is
right.
what you were getting, which I
But there
think
are
it
there are
could be.
people that have very ecstatic, happy alien experiences, and they have their
Yes.
good aliens they're working with, and yet and we have people like James Gilliland, Caroline
Hmm.
Corey, Peter Slattery in Australia, who I had a reading with recently. They've in their consciousness have been able to stratify all these beings and classes of beings
Mm.
in their own personal experiences and have their own understanding of we are dealing with angelic and demonic and
Hmm.
aliens, like it's all going on.
And human.
And human, so and military, right? So
Mhm.
and I say military loosely because a lot of it,
Yes,
as we know, is
correct.
corporations and
Yeah, we're not talking about like
multinational
regular
corporations,
guy in
things
the
like that.
army or something like
Right.
that. You know what I mean? It's like this like
Right.
dark project from a
Dark
multinational
projects,
corp. Yes.
DARPA, who
Right.
knows what.
Yeah.
Right. So I read a lot about that stuff, and like I read a lot of Annie Jacobson's books, and I read
She's
a
great.
lot of
I'd love to talk
secret
to
space
her.
program people. I've been told I'm in the secret space program. I have had dreams where I have these weird dreams. Okay, and it's like I'm in a control room, like something out of Star Wars, where there's like a war game table where they're looking at maneuvers, and it's like a light
Hmm.
board screen with like
Hmm.
generals looking down at stuff, and then the ceiling's glass, and and I look up with them, and they say they're coming, and the UFOs are coming.
Mm.
But not only are the UFOs coming, the sky is like a big grid. It's like points and lines connecting, and it's not like constellations, but it's not regular like grid paper, like regular squares. It's like there's this freaky grid in the sky, and the UFOs are coming,
Wow.
and we're all looking. So I was like, why do I have that dream? It's happened a
Mm.
couple times. That's weird. So I don't know about that, but all I know is Catherine Austin Fitz was saying on Tucker Carlson about all the black budget stuff going to building underground cities and underground bases
Yeah, it's
and
been going on
the,
for years.
the aliens and all this. I mean, people are waking up real fast. We've got all this underground base stuff going on off the oceans.
I
I
believe
had
that a lot of the
yeah,
underground bases that they built are, this is a new thing I'm gonna
mhm.
kick them on, but all the underground bases that they're building, they're actually finding the underground structures from an ancient civilization
Right.
and just
Tartaria
repurposing them.
factor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
And I'm
They're just finding
obsessed
these
with
underground
Tartaria.
and they're going,
Yeah.
wow, okay, we can use this.
Right.
I see it all the time in cities and stuff. I think
Mhm.
we think about how much effort it would take to dig out a subway system. Did they really do that, or did they just inherit that,
Repurpose.
you know?
Right.
Exactly.
And look at all the tunnels under DC.
Yes, exactly. In
Yeah.
Denver and everything. It's
We're not
crazy.
being told the truth. I mean, I
No.
love America. I love the
Me too.
Constitution and all
Yes,
that.
correct.
But we are not being told the truth about this continent and about all the founding of the cities.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah,
No, I don't think we've been being told the truth about literally anything
I agree.
lately. It's been the last 4 years. Like I've always been like a guy who questions stuff, but the last 4 years, I'm like, like the truth is coming out, but from the people, from us having these
From the people.
conversations, and people getting together and having these conversations. Wanted to shout out Yvonne again in your work with CERO, the Close Encounter Resource Organization. Can you talk a little bit about that, and how that's been useful?
Yeah, I mean, basically it's a support group. So
Mm-hmm.
Yvonne has support groups in person and she has them online. And so I go to
Mm-hmm.
the in-person ones
Mm-hmm.
and I meet amazing people and we share stories
Mm-hmm.
and she allows space for presentations and things. It's very nice. And it's all confidential.
Yeah.
And but I just wanted to say regarding Tartaria too. I'm
Oh
really, really
yeah.
into that. And
Yes.
recently I was in Ireland
Nice.
and I was on a 10-day bus tour and we added a couple of extra days. And I went to these megalithic sites, Noth
Mm-hmm.
and Newgrange and the Hill
Yeah.
of Tara. And I can tell you, Noth and Newgrange, look them up, check them out. There are
Yeah.
these
Seen them.
giant earthen mounds, and they look like spaceships that landed on the
Yeah.
ground. And they're tombs, and then they're like 5,000 years old. And then if you go, we were on the bus tour, and one night we pull up to this hotel in Sligo where W.B. Yeats is from, and he was
Mm-hmm.
a poet and an occultist in
Mm-hmm.
Sligo, Ireland. We pull up to this big hotel. It looked like a Tartaria thing. I was like, "What is this place? Oh
Yeah.
my
Like,
god!"
come on,
And
who
it's
built this?
look it up. It's the Clayton Hotel in
I will.
Sligo, and huge castle looking thing. And I said, it looks like one of those Tartarian mental institutions. That's what I thought. And so we asked the tour guide lady on the bus, what is this place? And she said, oh, well, it was a mental asylum for 150 years.
Oh, come on.
What? We're
I'm looking
sleeping
at
in
it.
an old Tartarian mental asylum? What? And sure enough, we looked it up and it had ghost stories. And I thought, oh man, I'm so scared. And sure enough,
Is this it?
I can't tell. It's the Clayton Hotel Sligo. I think that's
Okay,
another one.
that's Ballsbridge. It says. I'll
That
find
one,
it.
we stayed at that one. That was old too. That one we stayed at in Dublin.
I'll
But
show
there's
it after.
another
I'll show
Clayton
it
Hotel in
afterwards.
Sligo. And
I'll
anyway,
put it
so
up.
I had a ghost attack, my first ghost attack. And I woke up head to toe goosebumps, which really scared me because I knew that was a sign of ghosts, right? And electromagnetic changes like that. People with UFOs often have their whole body get goosebumps too. And so I had this, that was the sign that woke me up and I was so afraid. And then I was sleeping on my side and I felt something scratch my sheets like this, like on my sheets. And I could move though. I didn't have sleep paralysis. And so I scratched back like this. And then I went
Mm-hmm.
like, I hear you. And then it did it again, like, and then it went boop and it poked me in the arm. And I was so scared. I was so scared because it poked me in the arm. And I was like, no touching, no touching. And I said, oh my God. I said, stop in the name of Jesus Christ. And it stopped. And then I was terrified and I couldn't go back to sleep. And I was lying there waiting for my friend who was, silent through all this. So I thought she slept through it. And then finally my alarm went off and I woke up and I was like, Jennifer, get up. I had a ghost. And she said, I heard the whole thing. And I said, you didn't tell me you're awake. You're so mean. I was so scared. I was letting you sleep. Anyway, and we told the front desk and I asked all the rest of the people on the bus tour and none of them had that happen. And I wrote it up on TripAdvisor and I wrote it up on some other
Nice.
site for Haunted Ireland. And the hotel staff, they were like, yep, that happens here. Yeah. Anyway.
You should. What I'm gonna send you our episode with a dude from Ireland. He's ancient Ireland is like crazy. There's a lot
Mhm.
of stuff going on there, so
Yeah.
we'll send that to you. But yeah, I love that concept of like, us inheriting like a bunch of stuff, like an ancient,
Mhm.
even when I go to Paris, I've only been there once, so it's not like I go there all the time. But when I went to Paris, I was just looking around going, what the fuck? Like there's nothing built this nice anywhere else like in the world than in
They
Paris. Like,
can't. They
yeah, no, I
can't
don't think
build
they
it
could do
anymore.
that. Yeah, I literally don't think they could do that right now, right?
I
Yeah,
know.
that's what it seems like to me. Um, so you mentioned the telepathy tapes. I recently got to talk to Dahlia Burgoyne and
Yeah.
also Hakeem Eisler of the telepathy tapes and side games. And I wanted to ask you because I think experiencers in whatever the experience but experiencers have a more of an open awareness, for lack of a better word, to the our brains, like potential telepathically and things like that. So have you have you, because at the side games they do little games and train you, teach you how to train your brain. Have you tried to train yourself in some of these like extrasensory perceptions that I think go along with experiencers? Sometimes I think sometimes it's related.
I am so lazy. I haven't done any of that.
Have you seen what
But
they do though?
I've read about it.
Have you seen the side games and stuff?
I haven't seen the side games. I know they exist.
It's new.
I
They just
know.
started
I
doing it.
I, I got like I wanted my mom to go because she's really into the Monroe Institute and stuff.
Uh-huh.
Actually, I'm going
Yeah.
to see my mom for her 80th birthday, my adopted
Oh,
mom.
cool.
And we're going to the Edgar Casey research
Ooh.
place in Virginia Beach for her birthday. That's what she wants to
Ooh.
do.
So your
And
this is
yeah,
your
so we're
mom
gonna get
sounds awesome.
spa treatments and readings over there. Yeah, my family is very metaphysical, and these two sisters are again the sisters of the NASA uncle. And my grandmother
Okay.
saw aliens in the hospital once, and they were all mad at me because I put ideas in her mind. But I think my connection is maternal lineage. I'm not sure. I know I have negative blood type, and I have the
Mm-hmm.
green eyes and the Celtic lineage. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
You
It's
should talk.
maybe a thing.
Even just like on a side, you should talk to our friend Ciaran from Ireland because he's all into that, those connections. But y- Mike and I went to Contact in the Desert. I had like a weird kind of roundabout experience where I went to Contact in the Desert by accident in 2014 with my ex-girlfriend, and I was just vibing super high that year. And I was living out in California, and we were just camping in Joshua Tree, and happen upon like the first Contact in the Desert before it was actually a Contact in the Desert.
Mhm.
And then Mike and I started this show, and we decided to go to Contact in the Desert. And then I realized that it was the same event, like 10 years apart, which
It
was,
was the big improved version, or maybe
yeah,
some people like
yes,
the old
because
version.
the old version was like literally tents and whatnot. Did you get involved in those early on conferences at all? Like, I know like Yvonne's been involved in those. Have you ever
Yeah,
been to one of those?
I went to some in LA and in
Mm-hmm.
Arizona, but not Contact in the Desert until the last 3 years. I've gone to Contact in the
You
Desert. I was
have.
going to ones in Arizona. I was going. I went up to Conspiracy Con in Santa Clara
How was
and
that?
covered like heavy duty conspiracy theory stuff.
You got to
I was
speak
going
there,
to
or?
David Icke lectures and Jordan Maxwell. I was doing all that stuff in the 90s
Mm,
and early 2000s. So I was heavily influenced by. I went to a conference here in LA on mind control
mm-hmm.
technology. So
Mm-hmm.
I've always had all that on my radar, and I'm still very. I'm kind of freaked out, like this whole Rob Reiner murder. I worked at that house. I think it was that house. It might have been his dad's house, but they looked alike in Brentwood, catering back in the day. And Bill Clinton was there and Kevin Spacey was there. And I remember I was so David Icke about everything. And Clinton went around shaking everyone's hands, even the waiters. And I made a point to like run away from him and avoid him and not shake his hand.
Yeah, you don't want to shake that lizard person's hand, man. You don't know what they're gonna give you.
There were
You know,
all
he's
these
gonna
things like about
turn
that
you
night.
into an NPC or something.
And now I look back and I think, oh, Kevin Spacey and Bill Clinton and just weird things. I remember we were filling the water glasses before the banquet, and his was Clinton's was turned over, and I thought, why is that? And they said, oh, his Secret Service brings his own water. We don't give him water because it was poisoning. You know, it's a security thing. It was very interesting. We had to go through the metal detectors.
Well, because our water has friggin'
Yeah,
the mind
that
control
too.
stuff in it.
And I remember going through the
Can't
metal
give the
detector
president
that
that.
night at that job because I've worked a lot of presidential dinners actually, and I went through the metal detector and I said, I hope my alien implant doesn't go off, you know. And then I would talk to the Secret Service. I remember I had to follow Chelsea Clinton around with a tray for 2 days, and I was talking to the Secret Service. And I was like, I heard they have remote viewers that protect the president from remote assassination. He was like,
awesome.
You know, be like, lady, what are you talking about?
So when you were when you saw Kevin Spacey in person, he this is just me being super like out there, but he strikes me as like a high level like occult wizard or something, and I'm just making things up when I say that. But does he have like an aura like of, I don't know, like a weird aura to be around? Is his energy weird or overpowering?
I didn't notice that, but I wasn't. I don't know. I don't like to say things about people on speculation because I do believe in all that. The Epstein, I believe in all that crazy stuff, but I don't like to specifically.
I understand. Yeah, and that's a tough question. But he just seems to have an energy or an aura to him, and like I don't know if it's like a cult related, but like he just definitely seems like he
did have a charisma of a great actor and an intense aura. I couldn't say it was evil, from just being in the room with him, but no, I get asked often, like, because I always felt like I was on reconnaissance doing catering jobs, always, because I was like, looking around. What do these people read? What is that black and white checkerboard floor? What is this? What is it? I was always like that when I was on those jobs.
Well, recently I've been talking to these guys that have been kind of turning me on to like the occult practices. That's why I even asked of, the elites, and that covers finance, government, military, and media, which Hollywood's at the top of, right? And so there's, I think that's sort of a generalized part of sort of the control center. So not to implicate that him in general, but like, it's interesting to get a glimpse of like what the top end of some of these places work. You know what I mean?
I agree. And I'm a low level actress, and I've never been like brought to a party and drugged or anything, but I read about that. So I'm on alert. Like I actually met a couple of people who had weird scenarios where I met someone who said she was approached 3 times to sign her soul away on paper in exchange for a product line, for instance. And she turned them down all 3 times, but she said it's real, and they've come at me. So I was like, whoa, yikes.
And that's like sort of like a sign your soul away is like essentially the compromise to get put on top, right? And but then you're responsible for whatever message they want you to push.
Right.
Wherever.
You have to hold the line for their messaging. You have to do the Project Mockingbird talking points. You have to defend, and you have to demonize the other sides of anyone looking into that. And that's a real thing. So,
I think it happens in every arena of media.
I think too. I think it's in publishing. I think it's in medicine. It's not just Hollywood. Hollywood's just kind of obvious.
Yeah. At this point, yeah. But it never really was like that. The thing is like, and I don't want to put anyone down. Like, I'm 43. Like, we grew up believing like that, like, the messaging was like, pure in a way, like we weren't really thinking in 1996, Will Smith, all this stuff was like prepping us for some sort of weird alien or
I know.
whatever disclosure we're getting. We didn't know that. It just seemed like a fun movie,
I have a Will Smith story because after Men in Black, I was background on Enemy of the State.
Oh,
But
neat. That's a good
um
movie.
yeah, and they actually gave me a little bit to do to play like a receptionist where he walks
Uh-huh.
into the law firm and I sit at the
Uh-huh.
desk and he goes, "Where is so and so?" And I go and I look like they're in there, and then he storms off. So we did that scene, but it got cut. But
Mm.
anyway, I met him and I had taught fifth grade the day before, and I knew I was doing this movie with him, and I all the fifth graders wrote letters to him, and I had them in a big envelope and I gave them
Cool.
to him. But I talked to his assistant more than him. And I said, I'm really into Men in Black because I'm actually an alien abductee. And he said, well, Will got to go to the CIA when he was preparing for that movie. They like gave him a
Mm.
tour. And I was like,
Mm.
oh, that's very interesting. I've had a lot of people tell me interesting things on acting jobs. Like this
Mhm.
one girl, we were doing a bikini scene and we were all in bikinis in this trailer waiting to go outside because it was cold. And I was talking about UFOs. And she said, I got to talk to you in the back. So she goes in the back with me. We're standing there bikinis. And she said, I got to tell you something. I grew up in Maryland and my dad was really high up in the NSA. And I said,
Mhm.
keep going.
Mhm.
And she said, he took me camping when I was a little girl and we built a fire and we were looking at the stars, father daughter camping trip. And he said to me, what if I told you God was an alien and this
Mhm.
was all just a big experiment?
Mm.
And I was like, what? And what are the odds if I didn't open my big mouth that this woman would have told me that?
Right. That's one thing I like about you is you really are open about this. You really are. You talk about it, and you've been talking
Yeah.
about it for a long time. And
I
so
feel it's my mission. I really do. Like I wear t-shirts and I have bumper stickers all over my car and
right.
people, but it makes people break the ice. They'll see your t-shirt and they'll say, "Oh, I got to tell you a story." I have it happen at the airport.
Yeah.
So, it's fun.
Yeah. It's fun, and it's something that I think is important in this day and age because we're not going to get the real message from TV or a movie or even the government. We're not going to get the truth from there, I don't think. Do you? Like, we got to get the truth from ourselves. And does that make sense?
I think that disclosure is going to be ultimately a consciousness raising event that is unstoppable.
Yeah.
However, I think that I'm right. I have trust issues. I mean, I have trust
Same.
issues since
Same.
childhood,
I
but
think yeah.
I really
Military.
have trust issues with the official disclosure and the like. My biggest fear is that they want a one world government. They'll use it like they did COVID to get a one
Mm.
world government,
Blue beam. Yeah.
tyrannical society. And I don't want a one world run by Klaus Schwab and the WEF,
No,
the
nobody
W.
does.
And
But
so I don't want them using it, as a catalyst for that.
hmm yeah. Yeah, and that's what it seems like the modern disclosure is, versus like what it could be, which is like this global consciousness upgrade. What do you feel like that would be like the better alternative? What does that look like in your mind?
Well, on a good day, when I'm in Chris Bledsoe mode, which I love Chris, but
Hmm.
I don't totally trust anybody's perception of things,
Sure,
including
me
my
neither.
own. And I wonder, like, is Chris 100% right, or is he being manipulated by unseen forces or
Hmm.
by
Hmm.
the government? Or I mean, none of us. I don't know who has the truth, and I'm very indecisive. I have Mercury and Libra, and I'm just,
Look, the
you know,
everyone's
but
perception. I'm on this trip right now, Camille, where everyone's perception, I think, is like, untrustworthy. It's as untrustworthy as mine. And it's not to say anything about Chris Bledsoe. It's just that I feel like we're all just hominids having a weird experience and trying to communicate it to each other. And then there's something else much bigger happening above us and below us, whatever you want to call it, that's very confusing to everyone. And what the crazy part is that the story that we were all told, through the last 100 years, we're finding out is BS, and it's been a whole narrative. to control us in a certain way. And we don't need to go down that rabbit hole, but
Mhm.
like, it's all connected, like, to this, experiencer and UFO kind of thing. And so, yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you.
No,
I don't trust anyone.
but I think I think it will be a grand awakening. And
I hope so.
I hope so, and I pray, and I feel all the feels when I'm around Chris. Like, I love his
Mhm,
energy and his
mhm,
family. They're
mhm,
amazing.
mhm.
And but I just have so much trauma, and
Yeah.
I just have so much confusion, and I pray. All I do is pray. I go to church, I pray, and I say, God, bring me closer to the truth, even if it hurts, even if I'm, find out I was deceived about this or that. Just bring me closer to the truth, and protect us and keep us, and all that. And I think that it's going to be kind of biblical. And I think, like there will be
Mhm.
things in the sky, and there will be deceptions, and there will be this, and but there will also be, um I don't know. I have heavy religious programming though, but
I don't. Yeah,
I
but
think it's going to be wild, and I think we need to be prepared for anything. My instincts are stay loving and kind and helpful, but also be a prepper, also be aware,
mhm.
also have, some guidelines of your own,
You're not saying anything
mind.
unreasonable, Camille. You're saying everything very, very reasonable. It's a very reasonable thing to say in this time. And I've been noticing like everyone like kind of going back to their own version of like God and biblical whatever that looks like, including myself. Like I've been out of that game for a long time, and I've been kind of getting back in it lately, which and I don't know. I think it's because the overarching power is good in this equation. And if we look for that, like you said, because what I love about you is you're not being decisive. You're not saying this phenomenon is anything specific. You're just telling us what you experienced.
Yeah.
And that's really important to the underlying message that this is something bigger that we're all trying to understand. So I just really want to thank you so much for coming on our show to share that. Thank you so much for coming on our show and sharing your story, Camille. And you are working on a book. Is that what I'm hearing?
I am. I started it a long time ago. I put it aside because I went
Uh-huh.
religious, and now I'm like, okay, I gotta finish my book. And just, it's okay to say at the end of my book, I don't know what this is. These are my
Yeah,
ideas. It's
that's the
okay.
most important thing. That is okay. That's what everyone should be saying. That we don't know what this is, but we'll figure it out together.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And we're gonna this is gonna be a good one. I'm really excited that you showed up to talk to us today. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.